In 2013, a hiker named Wesley Doyle got lost on a mountain and did something smart. He called 911, and he stayed on the line, and he described his surroundings in careful detail so that rescuers could find him. He described a trail, a wooden footbridge, a rock shaped like a fist, a burned tree split by lightning. Search and rescue knew that mountain intimately. And as they listened to him describe exactly where he was, a cold feeling went around the room. Because nothing he was describing existed on that mountain. It never had. Don't stop early. He was not lying, and he was not confused, and that is the problem that was never solved. Wesley Doyle was 36 and a capable hiker, out for a day on a mountain he had climbed before. He set out in the morning on a marked, popular trail. By late afternoon his family expected him back, and when he wasn't, and his phone went to voicemail, they called for help. But before that, at around 4 in the afternoon, Wesley himself had called 911, because he had realized he was lost, and he had done everything right. The dispatcher who took the call kept him talking, which is what you do. Wesley was calm. He wasn't injured. He had water. He explained that he had wandered off the marked trail somehow and found himself on a different one, a narrow path he didn't recognize, and he wanted to describe it so they could work out where he was. The dispatcher patched in the local search and rescue team, men and women who had spent their lives on that mountain, who knew every trail and creek and rockfall on it. And Wesley began to describe what was around him. He said he was on a narrow dirt trail running along the side of a ravine. He said he had just crossed a wooden footbridge over a dry creek, an old bridge with a broken plank in the middle he'd had to step over. He said that ahead of him the trail passed a large gray boulder shaped, he said, like a closed fist. He said that just past it stood a tall dead pine, split down the middle and blackened, struck by lightning some years ago. He described all of it clearly, a man looking around himself and reporting what he saw. And in the search and rescue room, the veterans looked at each other, because Wesley Doyle was describing a place that was not on the mountain. There was no trail along a ravine in the area he'd started from. There was no wooden footbridge anywhere on that mountain, the creeks were crossed by stone or not at all. There was no fist-shaped boulder that any of them, with decades on those slopes, had ever seen. And there was no split, lightning-burned pine. They knew the mountain the way you know your own street. Nothing Wesley described was there. At first they assumed he had somehow crossed onto a neighboring mountain, wandered farther than seemed possible. So they asked him questions, careful ones, landmarks he should be able to see, the position of the sun, the sound of a highway that ran along one side. And his answers only made it worse. The things he could see did not match any mountain in the range. He described a valley below him on his left where there should have been a peak. He said the sun was setting in a direction that made no sense for anywhere he could have walked. He was describing, in calm and specific detail, a landscape that did not correspond to the real world. He did not sound frightened, not at first. He sounded like a reasonable man patiently describing an unreasonable place. The rescuers kept him on the line and started up the mountain anyway, toward his best guess of where he'd begun, because that was all they could do. And for 2 hours Wesley Doyle stayed on the phone, describing the trail he was walking, the fist-shaped rock he passed, the split tree, and then, he said, a second footbridge, and then a stone stairway going up into the trees that he did not want to climb but felt, he said, that he was supposed to. Near the end, his voice changed. He grew quiet. He said the light was wrong. He said it had been getting dark for a long time but the sky wasn't finishing. He said he could hear the search team's helicopter, which was true, it was up by then, but he said it sounded like it was underneath him, below the ravine, which was not possible. And then he said, very simply, that he didn't think this was the mountain anymore. The call ended a few minutes later, not with a scream or a struggle, just a loss of signal, the line going quiet the way it does when a phone finally dies or moves out of range. They searched that mountain for 2 weeks. They searched the neighboring mountains. They found his car in the trailhead lot where he'd left it that morning. They found, about a mile up the marked trail, a single water bottle that his family confirmed was his. They never found the ravine trail, or the footbridge, or the fist-shaped rock, or the split pine, because those things were not there to find. They never found Wesley Doyle. The recording of the call still exists, 2 hours of a calm man describing a place that isn't real, and the veterans who were in the room that day have never agreed on what to make of it. He was not delirious. Delirious men don't describe a coherent landscape consistently for 2 hours. He was not lying, there was no reason to, and no benefit in it. He was somewhere, describing what was truly around him. It simply was not anywhere that could be reached, or searched, or found. The mountain is still there, still climbed on weekends, its trails still marked. And in an emergency archive there is a phone call from a lost man who did everything right, who stayed on the line and described his surroundings so that help could find him, and whose surroundings turned out to be a mountain that has never existed, with a stone stairway going up into the trees that he felt he was supposed to climb,